Good afternoon and welcome to today's Digital Dealer webinar sponsored by Adtaxi. Today's presentation is titled Getting Your Dealership Back to Business. We're excited to introduce Adtaxi's Director of Automotive, Daniel Maynard, and Director of Sales, Mike Flynn. This webinar should run approximately 1 hour, and in that time, please enter any questions you have using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. And now, please welcome Daniel and Mike.
Hello, everyone. This is Mike, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us this afternoon. So it's been a crazy 6 months, to say the least. But point of good news is that I think we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel. We're seeing things reopen and things like that. So with that, we wanted to come together and share some insights and some ideas on how to get your dealership back to business as the country does begin to slowly reopen for business. So again, my name is Mike Flynn. I am the Director of Sales at Adtaxi. For anyone not familiar with Adtaxi, we are a full-scale digital marketing firm that specializes in the automotive space. And speaking of automotive, again, today I'm joined by Dan Maynard, Director of Automotive for Adtaxi. Say hello, Dan.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you, Mike, and thank you for joining us, Digital Dealer community.
Right. All right. So we're just going to kind of dive in here. So, here are the topics we're going to be discussing today. If you go to the next slide, Dan. There you go. So these are the topics we're going to be discussing today. There's, a lot of information around all this. I mean, we could literally spend all day talking about it, but instead we're just going to briefly summarize, what happened to get us to this point. We're also going to look at what's currently going on with the potential car shoppers. Then we're going to go out kind of on a limb and try to get a feel for what can be expected to happen based on recovery patterns from past market downturns. Now, with all that in mind, we're going to then get into the likely shifts in consumer behavior that you're going to need to account for as you try to get your dealership back to business. We're also going to aim forward with some specific recommendations and ideas that you can implement right away. Some recommendations that are more short-term over the next few months, and finally some strategies you'll want to work on over the next year or so. And then, hopefully once we're done, you're going to have a good, solid idea of the direction that you want to go in to kind of come out of this even stronger down the road than before. So let's just kind of dive in, all right? So what happened? Obviously, COVID-19, this whole pandemic we're dealing with, that's what happened. But, let's take a look at how that manifests and affected auto sales and shopping behaviors. The country started, restricting people and businesses. So what you're looking at here, this information comes from Experian. And if you're not familiar, they have an absolute treasure trove of data on consumer purchases and consumer behavior. So Experian put this website together in response to the COVID outbreak. And as you can see, the link here at the bottom, if you wanted to go in and check out yourself, you can go, right to their site and check out the latest data from Experian. It is updated weekly with shopping trends on the map, year-over-year sales trends right there at the top right, and year-over-year dealership website traffic at the bottom right. And what I find most interesting here is that the year-over-year sales decline that hit the bottom right around the week of March 30th, which you can see kind of represented by that negative 69% number. There's been ups and downs since then, but each week moving forward has been better than that low point and generally trending up a bit. So, that's obviously a good thing. Dealer web traffic took an extra week to bottom out, but the same story there too. Subsequent weeks have, still been down, but slowly recovering. So that's basically what happened. Now, Dan's going to kind of talk to us about the current state that we're in right now.
Thanks, Mike. We definitely want to recognize and understand what came before, but it's vital that we look onward to see the road that's in front of us. I think everybody is probably very much looking forward to looking ahead instead of looking back behind us, and it's kind of an ugly rear view scene at this point. So what history has taught us about navigating crisis is that decisions you make now have a huge impact in just a few months down the road. Automotive dealers looking to position themselves for recovery are going to need to adapt to the industry cycles and shorter planning horizons. They'll also need to prioritize initiatives that are best aligned with where the industry is headed, such as operationalizing home delivery or digitizing your dealership for future for the future of automotive purchase prices, right? So let's talk a little bit more about that. So just to kind of carry on what Mike was speaking to a moment ago in terms of the positive trend, I wanted to put this slide in because I think that it is really a positive indicator for us. In my consulting days, dealerships would always ask me, of course, the very first question when I got to a store, how do I make more money? You make more money by obviously, making sure that you're being smart about your efficiencies, and which lead to your grosses. But you need customers. Customers come in a variety of ways: phone call, form leads, walk-ins, etc. And what we found was, and there are many studies behind this, is that it starts with traffic. So you need traffic to be able to capture the traffic, to convert the traffic into the leads and convert those leads into sales. What we're seeing here on this slide is that there is a ginormous spike in auto traffic that we're seeing year over year. And again, this is a really positive sign that the lead volume and the car sales are likely to follow based on history.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that, we're kind of going out on a limb here, but we thought it might be helpful to kind of take a look at a few past recessionary downturns to see if there are any patterns that emerge for the subsequent recovery. So let's just kind of dive into that. So right here, you're looking at, this is vehicle sales data compiled by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis with an overlay of economic recessionary downturns, which they are represented by those, up and down vertical gray bars that you're seeing. So let's focus on the two most recent examples of extremely sharp declines. So, you're talking about the dot-com bubble of the late 90s and more recent financial crisis of, July of 2008. We're not as interested in how long it takes to hit bottom, but more so once the bottom hits, how long does it take to return to that pre-crisis, sales volume? So for the dot-com bubble, we're looking at 39 months to get back, roughly. And the financial crisis, which lasted much longer and went, much deeper, took, 52 months, which kind of makes sense comparatively, to get back to those pre-recession sales levels. So the most important point that we want to make here is that once the bottom hits, sales seem to recover on a pretty steep upward trajectory. So, that's what makes adapting quickly to these new market realities so critical. As you're going to make sure you're positioned to capture as much of those returning sales as possible. Now, shifts in consumer behavior. Every crisis causes long-term changes in consumer behavior. I mean, just think of 9/11. Before then, the whole airport experience has been changed dramatically. Before then, you could walk in straight to the gate. Nobody expects that anymore. What you're dealing with. So a pandemic of this scale, it's going to cause large changes as well in consumer habits. And your dealership's going to need to make those adaptations to cater to those changes. And in fact, I think at this point, most of us would agree that a lot of these changes are going to be what we call the new normal. So, here at Adtaxi, we've been more than curious to see what these changes are going to look like. So that's what we wanted to share. Some of these more recent consumer surveys and, kind of talk through some easy adaptations that your dealership can make in response to all of this. So this is just some data that we, from some surveys that we conducted. So, 72% of people, they're more inclined to purchase today if they could delay their payments. 62%, they're more inclined to purchase if the dealership offered home delivery, which obviously makes sense. Whereas 67% of dealerships are taking steps to ensure their safety. So the theme here is, the dealerships, people like to see them recognizing what we're all dealing with, like what's the current situation. With that being said, I think it's important to mention that buyers, 56 and older, they're actually twice as likely to actually stay away from the dealership because of, the risk of COVID and, the effects of people who are over 56, how it's, more dangerous for them. Where conversely, people who are 55 years and younger are more likely, but at the end of the day, you know, everything's changing. People aren't going. So when we kind of go to this, you know, this kind of next survey that we did, these findings are from another article that we were involved in, this time dealing with consumers in general and not just auto shoppers, and more specifically with their opinions on various questions around advertising. So, you know, 68% appreciate when ads show regard, again, for the current situation, as you would expect. I'm sure everyone realizes, you know, for anyone who's watching TV, that's what we're seeing. With a lot of the ads you're seeing are totally addressing, you know, the COVID-19 epidemic. Classic car dealer ads, not necessarily your friend in this current time. You know, that classic ad, come on down. You know, 62% understand and agree that companies serving ads have good intentions right now. So you're going to want to take great pains to stay, you know, on the right side of that line. That being said, anything to do with flexible payment terms as well as, you know, value-added services, that should be trumpeted, right? So free home delivery, home pickup services, those are the sort of things that they're going to go a long way to kind of get that customer to, you know, trust you and get them on your side. I think that's, you know, what we've been kind of seeing, Dan, as you would agree, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And we actually have a few, well, rather, now that we have an idea of consumer preferences, let's actually talk about how we can make them a reality. So chats and virtual consultations. Again, hopefully everybody on this call is at least thinking about this, if not already employing this. But specifically, what paperwork can customers complete at home today versus forcing them to come to the dealership and touch a desk, touch a piece of paper, touch a pen? A lot of services out there that can digitize and make that a lot easier to get done. You like it on the dealer side because this makes your deal come together much more quickly, where you have a lead that's mostly baked and that's going to be able to be in and out of your store much quicker than if they were to have to do their paperwork the old-fashioned way. So the other thing is, can service customers talk to a technician live over video so they can see in real time issues that are being worked on with their car, right? So again, there have been a handful of services available out there. I think Karma Automotive is one, and a handful of others, which allow you to really talk to your tech, just like you now are being, you know, conditioned to talk to your physician, which would be via video chat there. So once again, it's very, very efficient, but it's also very, very convenient for the customer not to have to go all the way down there. And there's a lot of studies that actually show that this will help increase your average repair order versus having to try and upsell them after they've come to pick up their car. Are your sales reps available to discuss specific vehicles, features, offers, or incentives live? Here again, I just really encourage you to get more comfortable. Certainly, you know, talk with your legal teams and make sure that you're protecting yourselves if you're getting into a new medium here. But a lot of folks are more than happy to have a video conference with your sales rep, and they can just get, you know, a lot of their questions answered versus going back and forth on an email. Some will still prefer email and text and things like that, but make sure that we're giving your customers the option to communicate with your store how they most prefer. Google offers a chat functionality through your Google My Business profile. Make sure yours is connected. We see a lot of dealerships who still haven't activated this feature. Again, it's a little bit of a new strategy or communication process than your store might be used to. But once more, the easier you make it for customers to communicate with you on their terms, the more interaction you're going to get and the more market share you're going to be able to pick up from the dealers who are not embracing these newer technologies. Finally, Google Meet, Google's enterprise-grade video conferencing platform, which is free, by the way. That's the only reason I'm plugging it here. And it's really, again, an easy way for you to be able to turn your dealership into a virtual showroom. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the examples of the creative that we're seeing resonate really well. And for all the marketing folks or data geeks on the line, these are the ads that we're seeing the best value on, at least the first two. We don't have insights into this particular tier 2 ad at the bottom here. But the point is we want to make sure that we are letting your customers know that we acknowledge the current environment and we acknowledge their concerns. And more importantly, we want to let them know what you've done to change your facility, your dealership, your sales process. What kind of precautions are you doing? How often are you wiping vehicles down after a test drive? What kind of requirements can they expect once they get to the dealership? So make sure that you're putting those efforts front and center, not just in your video ads, not just in your display ads, but even in your search ads. So just as a reminder, the best practice is to really give, whether it be Google or Microsoft, is many different variations of ad copy so that the algorithms can help decide, based on the user and what we know about the user, which is going to resonate the best. So again, this is something that you should 100% make sure you're including in the rotation of your display ads. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about ways to give back. Now more than ever, your customers want to feel like the businesses they're working with understand their situation, as we mentioned in the previous slide. Once more, folks, if you're not doing this currently, strongly recommend allocating a little bit larger portions of your budget or even your marketing strategies and efforts towards giving back to the community. Now is a perfect opportunity to help folks out who are in really, really dire situations here and really just help build that positive sentiment towards your brand, towards your store that a lot of times is not the easiest thing to do from a traditional marketing standpoint here. So again, if you're not already considering how you can give back to your community, definitely incorporate that into your marketing mix, not just for altruistic reasons, but because you're going to get a really, really positive response back as long as it's genuine. And again, the most important piece is making sure that folks are aware of those things that you've made available, like making loaner cars available for medical staff and first responders, opening your service bays to first responders and fleet vehicles to keep them on the road. Maybe you're offering complimentary discounts for services for medical staff, etc. So with as many people that are not walking onto the lots or entering the showroom today, even compared to 6 months ago, where the number back then was about 1.6 dealerships that somebody would actually physically walk onto before they bought a car, which obviously was down over the last 10 years just because of the digital age and how easy it is for us to do the research online. Now more than ever, it's critically important to make sure that that we have our engagement metrics defined and tracked well. And later in the discussion, we're going to give you some very, very specific examples about how to also assign values on that as well. Your agency should already be using website calls as a conversion point, which is visible within your Google Analytics. If they're not, folks, this is critical in refining your campaigns to deliver lower CPAs over time. So again, work with your ad agency, whoever's running your AdWords, and just make sure that if somebody clicks on your ad and subsequently calls the number listed on your website, which should be dynamically swapped to be able to match the source, that's visible within your metrics and your KPIs that you're measuring to decide whether or not your campaigns were efficient or not. If they're not able to do that, folks, I strongly recommend you maybe look for a provider who has those capabilities. It's pretty standard nowadays, but again, if they're not offering it to you, you may want to look around for a more advanced partner.
Yeah, 100%. So defining success, along with potentially shifting, which marketing conversions you're focused on, you may need to shift how you think about your overall sales success as well. We've been in such a hot market since 2008 that there is likely a whole generation of salespeople and even sales managers that have never experienced, a year-over-year decline in sales. A depressed sales climate, it's all about capturing market share. So look at all the sales available in your primary market area, and then look at how many you're actually selling. Your sales divided by that total market is your market share. Benchmark that number and dedicate yourself into aggressively focusing on increasing that market share. Those dealerships that adapt now, adapt early, they're going to be the ones that are best positioned to capture more than their fair share when those sales do start climbing back up. So, don't put yourself in a position where you have to play catch up and by no means get down on the business or on yourself because your dealership was affected by market conditions outside of your control, quite honestly. Just focus on capturing as much market share as you can, you know, compared to your competitors.
That's right, Mike, and this is really an important one that I just want to re-emphasize here. I know that the slide looks pretty obvious, and folks may be saying, okay, this is pretty fundamental, but I cannot tell you how many dealerships that we consult who fired their previous marketing agency because they didn't hit their goal compared to prior year, when in reality, to the defense of the folks that were fired, we see in many cases that they actually outperformed the current market conditions. So a recommendation there is really treat your success metrics just like you treat your investment portfolio. If it's outperforming the indices, that means that you're ahead of the game. If it's underneath the market, even if it's up, then you may need to clamp down a little bit on your advertising partners to get you some better performance there. But the point here is it's all relative.
Yep. Thanks, Dan. So okay, so now we have the foundation laid, right? So let's look at the potential roadmap for the next 12 months. We're going to break that down into 3 phases. You know, what can and should be done immediately, what you should implement within the next few months, and finally what you should shoot for, down the road within the next 12 months or so, right? So Dan, why don't you talk to us a little bit about that immediate strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back a slide here. Bear with me. Here we go. Let's start with what we can do to get your store back to selling as many cars as possible. And we'll start by talking a little bit about Google My Business. Again, folks, you're going to like this because it's free. Most of you already have this dialed in. But just as a reminder, make sure that you're leveraging all of the options within Google My Business so that you can keep your consumer base informed about your hours, about anything that's specific to the current conditions, including the precautions that your business is taking. And going a step further at the very end of the list here is enhancing your listing with a street view or interior photos. The easier you can make it for folks to visualize and understand the expectations of your dealerships, or excuse me, what they can expect when they go to your dealership, the less friction that you're going to have when folks that are going to talk themselves out of going onto the lot here.
Yeah. So reopening the business. A lot of you, I would assume, have most likely been part of a store reopening or rebranding in the past. And everyone is has at least one competitor that they've seen open in their market, right? The traditional grand opening, it's all about getting the word out to many people, as many people as possible, building that brand equity in your dealership. It's essentially standing up and shouting from the rooftops that you're open and have things that people want to buy and that they should buy from you for various reasons, X, Y, and Z. So I'm sure many of you never technically close your dealerships at all, but even if that is the case, a dedicated effort in a marketing campaign to reassert yourself in the marketplace, that's going to be the single fastest way to instill confidence in those, potential buyers. And the sooner that happens, the sooner you can reestablish, the cash flow that your dealerships need to keep moving, the better, obviously. Every grand reopening, it's more than just cutting a ribbon, more than just opening the doors, right? There's got to be a dedicated, thoughtful plan in place to, kind of wring out as much of that benefit to your dealership as possible, right? So you need to speak to that opportunity. So, specific ad copy, what do, customers expect, those type of things. The most important part is how much money are you going to be able to put into that effort? That number, that's going to frame out the rest of your decision. So, our recommendation is be aggressive. Those long-term dividends, they're going to make it well worth it in the end. That grand opening, it's all about driving awareness, right? So choose your marketing platforms with that in mind. Direct mail, within your primary marketing area, an email blast, geo-targeted displays, social campaigns, those all make sense. As well as digital video, that also be a great play, just due to the huge rise in streaming video that, that we've all been seeing, and we have the numbers to kind of show that. you know, since that pandemic began, the consumption is just really just growing and growing. So within those platforms, you know, be a little more liberal than you may regularly be within your targeting. So what I mean by that is, you know, kind of that laser focused targeting that's, you know, typically right for most campaigns might not be right for this type of campaign. This strategy is really meant to bring in as many people into the top of that sales funnel as possible. So it might be a good consideration to loosen up those targeting standards a little bit. And then finally, you know, craft your messaging in a way that makes sense given the current situation. Things like, you know, we're open, come on down. That's going to come off as, you know, a little tone deaf given the circumstances. So again, you're definitely going to want to instill confidence that doing business with you, it's not going to put them at risk. You know, they can feel safe, they can feel confident, and so just, you know, be mindful of that.
Thanks, Mike. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, please, please, please communicate your plan to your vendor partners as early in the process as possible. Your vendor partners are often overlooked when it comes to communication, but I think that they should actually be one of the very first calls you make, right? So, you know, unlike when we're dependent on the factory incentives, this is within your control. So Adtaxi is actually a B2B business ourselves because we act as a marketing vendor for our customers. I can't tell you how many times we could have been a much bigger help for no additional cost had we just been you know, more you know, brought into the loop, had we known or been consulted sooner in the decision-making process. A business typically outsources different things to a vendor because that vendor is either has a skill set that you don't have in-house or specialized knowledge and resources that you can't match internally. They want to be your partner and they want to help, so be sure to consult with them. My recommendation is to make sure that you're having at a minimum a monthly virtual summit with every single vendor partner that has to do with advertising so that everybody can be on the same page and in this, working off of the same cadence with your marketing campaign calendar. We've seen that that the demand is starting to slowly pick up again, and again, that's a very, very positive sign for all of us. Those who are on the path to purchase are still deciding, so let's make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. Dynamic search to pick up on new and long tail searches for new and used inventory build campaigns, focused on what bring in, you know, revenue, whether it be new, used, or even, you know, top service schedules that bring in the highest return on investment there. So I do want to just really emphasize one piece on that, and that is the dynamic search, right? So if you're not familiar with how dynamic search inventory works, it actually connects to your inventory management system and allows, for example, a Toyota dealership who happens to have a 2017 Chevy Silverado sitting on their lot, an off-brand used vehicle, to be able to serve an ad when somebody is doing a search for a vehicle that lives within their inventory. So very, very powerful and efficient tool. That's a great way to make sure that you're being as efficient as possible with your marketing spend. Again, push your vendors to make sure that they're taking these advanced steps. Not all vendors have this capability, but start the conversation early, and I strongly recommend that product as a really, really good return on your investment. Along the same lines from a retargeting standpoint, folks, from a display campaign measurement stance, we, and I'm sure all of you, are seeing by far the best results coming from your retargeting campaigns for obvious reasons. Obviously, these folks have already come to your store, they've already shown interest, they've already shown engagement. We're just trying to pull them back into the funnel to make sure that we don't lose them to a competitor who may lure them away, or you know, maybe make sure that we're just staying top of mind. Specifically, what we're seeing on our side is the best return on ad spend is coming not just from retargeting, but once more from dynamic retargeting. And again, the way that works is you know, I'm not going to just present the same VIN that I know a customer was looking at on my website, but if I know they were looking at a $60,000 full-size pickup, maybe I want to put different color variations. Maybe I want to put different trim levels of the same model. Maybe I want to put different, heavy vehicles within the same price point there. So the idea is to certainly stay top of mind, certainly remind them of, what they were shopping for before, but again, give them some additional options and give them some additional incentives to come back to your website by serving, similar inventory based on what we know they were engaging with on your website.
Yep. So thanks, Dan. So, kind of getting into the grand opening, the grand reopening. So, paid media is great and it's obviously very important, but don't forget about the free ways to kind of get that word out there. Get it on your website, get it on all of your company's social media sites, and, maybe even you have staff that's willing to kind of help share that out as well. But another good recommendation is to put in a call to your local TV stations, radio stations, newspapers. Local news, it's obviously been more than a little depressing lately. So, good feel-good story about a local business, getting ready to reopen, do the economy looking better, getting people back to work, serving their community. It's really a no-brainer, right? Plus, it's free media exposure for you. So there's a good chance that you probably spend advertising dollars with a lot of these outlets anyway. So, now's not a bad time to call in those favors, right? So looking forward, right, to get those initial pieces taken care of as soon as possible, given, your local circumstances. And once that's done, you're going to want to shift your focus to that low-hanging fruit that you can go after now. And, that's going to have the greatest long-term impact. So we're going to take a look at what that is next. So, here's a few good ideas on kind of where to focus in that short term, right? So SEO, search engine optimization, it's really not something that can be really turned off or turned on. It's, by the very nature of it, it means that you're moving forward or you're moving backwards and never sitting still. So it takes time to increase organic rankings on the various search engines. And that time is measured really in months and years. Because of that, now is that time to really press ahead with that SEO strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, now's the time to start. SEO is generally a low cost compared to a lot of the other digital marketing strategies, a lot of other marketing strategies in general. In fact, now is a great time to focus on your website as well in general. Do a deep dive into the site. Try to see it, through the eyes of a potential customer. Focus on providing a seamless experience as possible. I mean, that's always Google's primary objective is to give a seamless experience. So kind of keep that in mind. Some things to think about. When's the last time you've updated your About Us page, or do you even have About Us page? What about some content around your involvement in the local community? You would, do well to mention that. Maybe a homemade, video of the owner telling customers just how much they're appreciated, especially now. It's an opportunity to be creative. These opportunities, they're not limited, and it's really, again, a great opportunity to kind of, get yourself out there and connect with the community. For any businesses that maintain, some sort of CRM, some sort of customer list, I recommend taking a serious look into, data hygiene, like cleaning that up, right? Your customer list, it needs to be accurate, it needs to be complete, meaning name, address, phone numbers, right? There's companies out there that can, help you. They can append your customer list, with any missing data fields. And that can be invaluable from a marketing perspective. Your customer list, that's your first party data. And companies like us, companies like Adtaxi, we're able to target, your marketing on platforms like Google Search based on that exact data. So making sure that it's as clean and complete as possible, that's going to put you in a great spot to come back strong, when we're on the other side of this, which none of us know exactly, but it's coming. So you definitely want to take care of that. And lastly, make sure that your online reputation is in a good spot. Respond to those questions and comments. Reach out to past customers and make sure that, they're feeling good about your dealership. Any improvement reviews is only going to, again, pay dividends in the long run.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about virtual showrooms and test drives. Really great opportunity here, folks, to to connect with your shoppers. And I don't just mean getting your name out there. I mean, let's humanize the store, which has always been a challenge for us, but we can start doing things now, and it's become much more acceptable. We start seeing national brands using YouTube videos and homemade videos in their commercials. Why not allow your associates to shine and potentially connect with somebody who resonates with that, maybe has something in common with the associate that you're putting on camera to do a walk around, to do an interior explanation of the new features or benefits or technology within the car. So you absolutely don't have to hire a $20,000 production company to come out and make it a Hollywood level film. Again, a lot of stores are actually seeing quite a bit of success in allowing, and I'll even give you a very specific recommendation. Put $100 on the hood of a car and make it fun for your staff, and put a video challenge out there to see who can come up with the best video, and then send it over to your advertising agency. We can chop it up, edit it, overlay it, even do a voiceover if need be, and put that out in the appropriate places, whether it be programmatic video, whether it be connected TV, whether it be YouTube. These are great mediums to be able to, again, resonate with your customers and humanize your store. So if you're serious about doing video, connected TV is not the answer. Programmatic video is not the answer. YouTube video is not the answer. And traditional TV is not the answer. The answer is all of those platforms, right? So if you're doing a really, really solid job on YouTube and you're getting great responses and you have great content out there, folks, maximize and leverage those efforts, and make sure that those media, those assets are also being run on programmatic and connected TV, and even your terrestrial buys as well. If you're not familiar with programmatic video, by the way, programmatic video is, think of the ad spaces all over the web that generally will accommodate a display ad, but also have the ability to show a video in the player there. So effectively, it's a lot of the video that folks online are consuming outside of YouTube. So they complement each other really, really well. And I like to say that there are a million rays of light that hit a consumer throughout their journey there. So it certainly isn't a bad thing if you can catch them on their big screen in the living room through connected TV, as well as through programmatic video when they're checking the news on their favorite news website, or sports scores now that the sports are starting to come back up, as well as through pre-roll videos or a handful of other offerings that we can leverage YouTube for. So again, video everywhere is something that I strongly encourage folks more than ever to allocate enough budget to be able to power that, regardless of who your provider is. So auto shoppers are using online videos such as digital test drives to fill the void of closed dealerships lots. And again, I think that's pretty obvious. But what we know from our path to purchase studies is that YouTube is the top destination for auto purchasers to experience video, a thorough video walkthroughs. Again, folks, this is free. So take the opportunity, take the downtime. If you have associates walking around your lot waiting for the next stop, again, challenge them. Put a couple of videos out there that really would help serve as extra hooks in the water to try and get folks coming into the dealership. We have some great ad formats designed to drive lead generation, targeting users who are actively searching for your dealership or brand. So again, work with your agency and make sure you're leveraging all of the newest capabilities within YouTube. There are a couple of beta and even alpha pieces to YouTube, which would allow you to effectively generate more leads directly from YouTube and fill out forms from YouTube. So again, work with your provider and make sure that you're fully maximizing that particular medium. Okay, so let's look forward beyond the 1 to 3 month mark, and let's start talking about the next 3 to 12 months. Throughout the webinar, we've discussed ways to digitize and simplify the road to a new car for your customers. Fast loan approvals, competitive and transparent pricing and incentives, and that's a big one. Hopefully there aren't any folks still on the line that are saying call for price or submit a lead for price. Folks, we just simply cannot operate that way anymore. We're going to turn off far more folks than we're gonna, make feel comfortable engaging in that process. So just be aware of that. Limiting or removing, all the physical paperwork and digitizing the sales and service offering where possible. Folks, again, I can't stress that enough either. Make sure that you're making your dealership as current as possible. And I'm not just talking about from a pandemic standpoint, but really from the expectations of the millennials and the Gen X and Gen Ys, who have a different expectation of how they want to do business, and specifically, complete paperwork. They prefer to do it digitally versus the traditional pen and paper way. Now more than ever, dealers should really be aligned with their OEM and tier 2 campaigns. And this isn't, a plug, seated by your OEM. Really it's a way that, we can leverage the millions and millions of dollars the OEMs are pouring into service campaigns, into certified used vehicle campaigns, and other initiatives that are specific to your brand. Folks, if you align your marketing calendars to at least be aware of and work off of the momentum that, again, the millions of dollars that your tier 2 and tier 1 agencies are spending, you're going to see your marketing dollars stretch much further. And here at Adtaxi, we are keen on one metric in particular, and that is dropping your average cost per vehicle sold. Our job, our whole mission in life, is to bring down your average cost per lead. And again, that's a really easy way to do that. Whether you're working with Adtaxi or another agency, make sure that you're aligning and timing your messages with what's coming out of your tier 2 and tier 1 agencies.
Yeah, and actually, the automotive industry is actually pretty lucky right now, because anyone that has attended, a digital dealer or an NADA within, say the last 18 months knows that digital retailing, it's been a huge focus. So if you've already installed a digital retailing solution within your dealership, then you're ahead of the game. If not, then, I would recommend getting started. COVID-19, it's really could be looked at as the catalyst that the automotive industry is, kind of been waiting for to push online vehicles sales into that mainstream. I mean, that's definitely what we're seeing now. So every single survey that, we've seen, including the ones that we've conducted ourselves, point to a huge majority of people leaning into just that. So, if you're looking for a provider, I recommend starting with conversations with your website, DMS, and CRM providers. There are a lot of integrations that need to happen seamlessly to make digital retailing work, and those platforms are the ones most heavily affected. So I would start there, then branch out if you're not happy with what you get from those initial conversations. Once you have the technology, though, the work is really just beginning. Digital retailing, it needs to permeate every single part of the sales process for it to live up to the promise of easing the friction between customers and the dealership. You're going to need to codify this process, the process changes that need to happen at your dealership to thrive within this new dynamic. So things like, what are the rules in the process for at-home test drive? How do you handle virtual trade appraisals consistently? How does this change or affect the traditional steps of the sale? So put some serious thought behind this, right? Make sure that, leadership obviously is brought in across each department, including parts, including service, finance. There may even need to be staffing changes as a result. Or at the very least, a redefining of responsibilities and expectations. At the end of the day, if all you do is install the code on your website, you're going to end up like those companies that, create a Facebook page and then, they're basically convinced themselves they have a social media strategy, right? It just doesn't work. So, digital retailing adoption, it's going to be a key factor in determining, which dealerships are the winners and which ones are really going to be left behind over the next 5 years. So, just be sure not to get caught flat-footed, quite honestly.
So with even fewer walk-ins, as we talked about earlier, folks that are just simply not willing or comfortable going to the dealership for a variety of reasons, it's more important than ever to ensure that you're both quantifying and assigning a value to every action you deem valuable, including your form leads, your service schedule appointments, chats, and most importantly, your phone calls, because as we all know, phone calls have absolutely eclipsed for a long time now the form lead submissions there. So generally speaking, for every form lead you get, you're about 10 to 15 people will actually call into your store. So that goes back to really making sure that your dynamic number insertion is tied to your ad so that your ad strategy can be informed by the folks who are actually picking up the phone and calling there. And then finally, make sure that you're assigning a specific value to that goal, to any goal that you're asking your marketing partners to solve for. So just for some easy math, I know these numbers are probably way out of whack here, but just for easy math, if your store averages $1,000 front and back gross on a new car and your close rate is 20%, well, that means that it's going to take you 5 leads to make $1,000 of profit there. And so if you do that math, that means that any lead that comes in, and let's just say we're talking about phone calls, you have a 20% close rate on your phone calls, that phone call, using the math, is worth about $200, right? Because for every 5 phone calls, you're going to make $1,000 in profit there. So fill in those metrics with your actual numbers, and then relay that to your marketing partners so that they can accurately assign a value and give you reporting that's meaningful to you and your stakeholders. So we'll give you a few resources to wrap up here. I'm not going to read each of these to you. There's quite a bit, but I do encourage you to read through all of these when we send this presentation out to the folks who signed up for this presentation. And if you don't feel like reading them, just get them over to your marketing partners or your marketing directors and make sure that they're aware of and abiding by these rules. We really want to make sure now more than ever that we're keeping you in compliance with Google's changing policies, specifically Google, but a lot of the platforms are changing their policies as well. So let's see here. This is really going to help to ensure that your ads don't get flagged, and they're going to keep your campaigns producing valuable leads. So again, just be mindful that there are some new quote unquote rules that we need to be sure are not affecting our ads or our campaigns, because they will be paused, and a lot of times it's automated and it takes some time to get those unlocked.
Yeah, and it kind of piggyback off of that, Dan, just, everyone keep in mind that, you're not in this alone, right? You have the resources. So keep an eye on materials coming out of your local chamber of commerce or the Better Business Bureau. Seek out experts within the auto industry and, see what they have to say. LinkedIn is an invaluable tool for that sort of thing. And I kind of recommended this earlier, but again, I know Dan mentioned it, check in with your vendors and partners. They work a lot with other companies, and they can have ideas that are working elsewhere that, you might not have thought of that you would want to implement. And then finally, you can check out the resources that Adtaxi has available on our website. We're releasing content all the time. So if any of this webinar has been helpful to you, you're likely to find out, other items that, we produce that could certainly be helpful as well. And just to kind of recap, I'm just going to read off this slide here. So, hopefully, and I think we can feel confident about, we're likely past the bottom of this market here, right? So we're, it's going to be important to focus on capturing, again, that increased market share, remembering that consumer expectations, they have definitely changed, and, they're expecting you to change to, as well. Get the word out that you're open for business and start taking those steps that are going to pay dividends later, right? That's going to be the bigger payoff. And be sure to reach out again to your partners for help and advice.
Okay, folks, we are 2 slides from the home stretch here. So before I give my closing remarks here, I do want to just remind everybody who's still with us that you are more than welcome to submit questions. And if you just scroll your mouse towards the top of the screen, you'll see a little window that pops down that says Q&A. Go ahead and click on that and submit questions there, and we will answer as many as we have time for. So with that, I'm going to go back here briefly, pardon me. This is an accolade slide that may look similar to other agencies, and that's a good thing. Aside from this Google Sales Innovation Award here, folks, if you're a franchise car dealership, especially in a competitive market, you really shouldn't be working with folks that don't have these accreditations and partnerships. Again, we're in a battle here, folks, and we need to make sure that we have access to the most powerful arsenal and tool sets and weaponry available to us. And again, there's different levels of tools and beta tests and alpha tests that are available to folks who have deeper partnerships with some of the platforms you see here on the screen. So again, whether you're working with Adtaxi or you're working with a different agency, just make sure that they have the backing and the support from the partners that are helping drive most of the traffic here. And then the very last slide we have for you all. Thank you again for sticking with us. It's been a great webinar so far. We want to give folks who've made it this far in the presentation a gift. So if anybody is looking for a free audit, if they just want an extra set of trained eyes from folks who have been doing this for quite some time without any obligation, get in touch with us, and I'll have our contact information on the next and last slide here. And we'd be more than happy to lift up the virtual hood, so to speak, and give you our honest feedback and assessment of it. As long as folks aren't afraid of hearing their baby being called ugly, give us a shout, give us access to your Google Analytics temporarily, and we will tell you exactly what we see. And realistically, you can take those recommendations, implement them on the spot, or send them over to your current provider. And again, there's zero obligation to work with us. I hope you take us up on that. Every single time we do an analysis, we find some low-hanging fruit and some opportunities to increase your profitability. And again, it's such a complex world we live in. There's so many different data sets and reports that you're getting. It can be very difficult to identify and tease out some of the more meaningful and actionable pieces that come out of that data. So we have some incredibly talented data scientists, data strategists that we lean on that are just absolute detectives and trying to find out what's broken and where the opportunities for improved profitability come from. So again, take us up on this, folks. Zero obligation, and we can usually get it done within a handful of days. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dan. And so, with that being said, on behalf of Dan and Adtaxi and myself, just like to thank everybody for taking the time out of your day to attend this webinar. We hope that you now have a framework, right, for getting your dealership back up and running. If you're a client of Adtaxi, please reach out to your rep if you have any questions, if you're maybe just looking for an evaluation or just any further insight at all. If you are not a client, but you do have questions or need an evaluation or anything, any insight, please go to adtaxi.com, or you can email us at info@adtaxi.com. Again, thank you very much for attending. We really appreciate it. And I believe we are going to take some questions. Is that correct?
Thank you both. We're now in the Q&A portion of the webinar. So if you haven't already, please submit any questions you may have by using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We already have a few questions lined up here, so let's get started. Outside of YouTube, what other video channels are you seeing success in for auto dealers?
Yeah, I'll take that one. That's a great question. YouTube is a remarkable resource, and I think any of us would be impressed at the scale and the scope and the success of that platform. But the question being, what's available outside of YouTube? I mentioned it briefly, but I'm telling you, folks, programmatic video that encompasses more than just a single video network or display network is really the way to go. So we use the trade desk. The trade desk is, in my opinion, the premier option for making sure that that dealerships and advertisers, in general, have the widest scope and the widest breadth of video offerings out there. And so the idea here is that the more inventory that your campaigns have access to in terms of identifying your target audience within the geography that you're going after, the cheaper it's going to be for you versus rushing to, again, nothing wrong with YouTube at all, except for that's where where almost every single dealership already advertises, and so it's becoming in some cases a red ocean. There is more inventory now, which is great, but as things start to kind of get back to normal consumption habits from a video standpoint, you're really going to want to make sure that you have access to a network that includes Google Display Network and Facebook, and there's about 15 additional display/video networks out there. So again, I strongly recommend working with a partner that taps into more than just Google and Microsoft, which again are great partners and great platforms, but there is they maybe make up, believe it or not, 60 to 70% of the video content out there. There's still a lot more gas in the tank, so to speak, if you want to be able to reach more or get into bluer oceans where you're going to pay less per conversion, pay less CPM to get in front of the exact same shoppers there.
Given the focus on buying online, are people buying from dealers that are further out from their home rather than pre-pandemic?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and of course the answer is going to be conditional depending on where you are. What I can tell you is the campaigns that we look at, we're always measuring and looking, through analytics and AdWords and other platforms, how far away those folks are, and so the short answer is yes, they are absolutely more apt to drive further, and that's going to be for two reasons I'll list, and I'm sure many more that I won't have time to get into. But the first piece is again, Mike mentioned that the study we put out came back and essentially told us that folks who are 56 years of age and older have said via the survey that they're far less likely to walk into a store. So again, if your dealership is 10 miles further down the road, and you're the one who are offering free home delivery compared to the dealership right next door, then absolutely and obviously they're gonna tap into the folks who are going to cater to their buying needs. And the second piece of that is that it's no secret that used cars are going through the roof right now. Because of the compressed inventory situation, as well as folks' ability to afford less car than maybe they could 6 months ago when their paychecks weren't adversely affected. So anytime you can make sure that your specific inventory, especially if it's a unique vehicle or a lower price vehicle, is front and center and out in the wild, that's where we start to see time and time again folks, compared to new car purchases, will absolutely venture even in metro areas, not just 10, 12, 15 miles. We see a decent portion of not just the traffic but the actual purchasers, when we do the post-mortem and look at the CRM data, are actually driving as far as 30 and 50 miles out. And so what we do is we recommend aligning the advertising accordingly, right? So if you have a 20% close rate on the folks that are coming into your store, or the leads that are coming into your dealership from within your PMA, but maybe your close rate drops off. Let's just, for easy math, say that it goes down to 10%. So you get half the close rate when you start going outside of your sweet spot, outside of your core market area there. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't advertise outside of your core marketing. It just means that we need to be smarter so that we can enjoy the same return on your ad spend, and see a linear return on your overall investment. So all you need to do is set your max bid for half the max bid that you would be willing to pay for somebody who is within your PMA there. And again, that's just a really easy way, and unfortunately, a strategy that we do not see being employed on a lot of campaigns that we take over, and we start correcting on that. So again, modify your bids accordingly. We call that a targeted, a multi-tier search strategy, specifically, where you're going to pay more for the leads that are going to come in your immediate vicinity. You're still going to put yourself out there for the outlying areas there, but just make sure that you're not bidding as aggressively on those, and you'll see a linear return on your investment there. Good question.
Great. Last question. Oh, did you have something?
No, I was just saying that was a great question. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Last question is, how important is OTT and what is classified by OTT? We're seeing a ton of people cutting the cord, so want to gauge how we can best talk to those people.
Sure, right. So over the top is I know a term that's been very, very popular in terms of talking points and folks kind of rolling that out. Here's what that means. Well, to answer the first part of the question, OTT is very important right now because of what I think Michael is the one who asked the question. The increase in not just number of folks who are not willing to rent that cable box, not willing to pay, the $150 to the cable companies that they demand in the past, and they want to be able to view a lot more, on their terms. They want to be able to record on a cloud DVR, and so we're seeing, a ton of folks get away from the traditional cable model and sign up for services like YouTube TV, for example, which for $65 a month, and this isn't a commercial for that, but this is really understanding not just your younger generation clients, but we're seeing the age ranges go all the way into the 70 plus mark, and a lot of it is because it's more cost effective. A lot of it is being influenced by the younger generations within the household who get mom and grandma and grandpa to to embrace and really start getting excited about again, different mediums of consuming TV outside of the traditional cable box there. So yes, let's make sure that that you're incorporating a significant portion of your budget there. And I would go so far as to say that half of your video budget should be on digital TV, which includes OTT. And again, the biggest benefit here, folks, is that you're still showing up on the biggest screen in the household, the TV in the living room or wherever they're watching, streaming their content from, but you can be just as targeted with the folks that you're serving your ads to as you are in your digital display. So imagine if your cable provider, if your cable rep came to you and said, hey, listen, I'm going to give you the opportunity to advertise within our vast platform, but the good news is I'm only going to charge you to serve your commercials to folks who have shown buying signals, an intent to purchase a vehicle within the next 90 days. And furthermore, you're only going to pay for those people who watched your ad from within a predefined area, zone, a radius that you define, 10 miles, 5 miles, 15 miles, whatever it may be. And that's a very, very powerful concept to consider that I don't think most general managers are really kind of appreciating yet, right? I still see a very disproportionate spend level happening on cable compared to the much more measurable and impactful OTT offering there. And so the last thing I'll say on OTT, and again, I really want to engage the data geeks and the hardcore marketers on this comment, that is that with OTT, if done right, if using the most advanced platforms out there, which we are one of many companies that have access to these, you can absolutely see conversion data from an OTT campaign. What do I mean by that? If I serve your ads, your commercials on OTT to 10,000 people who fit the profile of the buyer that we're trying to go after, believe it or not, I can actually show you reporting on how many folks viewed your ad, watched it in its entirety on the big screen TV, and subsequently came to your website within the following 30 days and actually took an action that you deem valuable. Again, a phone call, a lead, form submission, a service scheduler. So again, folks, let's make sure that we're really kind of understanding what OTT's benefits are compared to terrestrial. There's nothing wrong with running branding ads that hit the entire DMA, but that's secondary. That's a third or fourth layer. If you're not doing the core campaigns that that you can target and measure, pull back some dollars from there. We actually had a dealership in Sacramento that cut their entire traditional budgets, and it was for one store, it was about a $75,000 or so investment, and they went completely digital, and the impact was profound in terms of what they were able to measure from their investment in terms of customers that watched the ad and came back to the dealership and converted. One last thing on there, the other neat thing is that we can actually customize the message. So what, if your commercial is showing during halftime of a game, and we know that they're sitting in a competitive make, we can show them a very different and specific message that's intended to conquest versus just sharing a generic message about your store or trying to sell them on whatever model that you're promoting there. So that's, again, the beauty, one of probably thousands of benefits that I see over traditional TV. And by the way, we sell traditional TV as well, so I'm not trying to poo-poo that medium. Again, it's very useful, but in my opinion, we need to be doing OTT before we get into the less measurable and less targeted elements of traditional.
Great. Well, thank you to Daniel and Mike for a great presentation, and thank you all for attending today's webinar. Look out for an email this afternoon that'll include a recording of today's session, contact information for Adtaxi, and a link to more upcoming digital dealer webinars. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.